Today, Alex and I are down in sunny San Diego. Hopefully you're able to stay warm at home, but we're here to take a look at the 2024 Jeep Wagoneer S. And this is Jeep's first battery electric vehicle here in North America. And they call it the Wagoneer S, but one of the first things Alex and I looked at this thing and said is, this is a lot like the current Grand Cherokee, right, Alex?
Yes, it is. This is only 1 inch shorter than the Jeep Grand Cherokee. The roofline, that is 6 inches shorter than the Grand Cherokee. And that comes because we get about 2 inches less ground clearance, and then they basically squished the box on top in order to give it better aerodynamics.
And that ground clearance is not adjustable, right? There is no air suspension here, so that is it as it comes. Now, this is the launch edition, so this is, for the moment, the top dog. There may be some higher marks down the road, but essentially all the equipment that's going to be available on this that we might see packaged in different models down the road, we have here. And it starts in about $72,000, which is quite a bit for the only battery electric Jeep available.
Yeah, just under 72, and it'll go up to just over 74 because the only options available are optional paint. So this has the two-tone paint option, about $600 or so.
And worth it, I think.
Yep, and then it has the other option that I think I would get, which is the red interior. We'll take a look at that in a bit. That's $1,000. This one does not have the optional $1,000 towing package on it, which gives you what,
about 3,400 pounds. So it can tow a smaller trailer, but this is not going to be the towing champion if that's what you're looking for in your Jeep. Honestly, at that point, you're looking at probably a 4xe Grand Cherokee if you're trying to stay electrified, and that's going to have significantly more, honestly, almost double.
Yeah, but it won't look quite like this. Let's take a look at the front. So we have a combination projector and reflector LED lights. Sorry for the flickering of the DRLs there. And then we get this really interesting touch in the front. So instead of a traditional 7-slot grille, because less cooling is required, if I look under here, these are actually LED modules that are shining light reflecting on this textured section of the front end. And I think that's a really cool look because it really looks like a Jeep at night. During the day, I guess it still looks like a Jeep, but a little bit less than at night with that display.
Yeah, to me it's a bit like a jaw situation, right? Because there's almost a little bit of an overhang and there's kind of a gap here. And honestly, the funniest part for me is that this most closely looks like another electric vehicle, and that's the Prologue with the accessory front end. But I will say this is probably a better fit and probably a better application of that. We also
we both teased Honda for sticking a Jeep grille on the Prologue.
Yeah, and honestly, it worked okay for it, but I do think it works a little bit better here. The thing here about this Jeep is this is by far the sleekest Jeep available on sale, and from a distance you go, that's a Jeep, and as you get closer, everything gets a little bit tighter and a little bit more sharply creased.
Yeah, and part of that I think is because this is of course riding on the new STLA large platform, which is not a 100% dedicated battery electric platform. This is a multi-use platform designed for front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, electric, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, basically everything that is available except for a hydrogen car can be done on this platform. So there are some pros and cons to that. The pro, I think, is the style. We do have that relatively long hood design, which allows a reasonably sized front trunk. The con is perhaps efficiency, although this is lighter than some of the Ultium vehicles, which are 100% dedicated EVs. And we have some pretty substantial EV performance numbers here. So the battery pack positioned between the wheels, that is 100.5 kilowatt hours gross capacity, 94 kilowatt hours usable, 0 to 60, 3.4 seconds, thanks to 600 horsepower from twin identical electric motors. We also have an electronically disconnecting front axle, which will help improve efficiency out on the open highway, and this really swoopy rear end. If Travis comes in for a bit, I mean, just check out the size of this wing in the back. This thing is enormous. You could put a football, I don't know, even maybe a basketball through there, one of those small kid basketballs, and that's all because they needed to improve the aerodynamics. So when you're looking at this versus Grand Cherokee, the big difference in cargo capacity is going to be right back here thanks to that slope. Now, if we come in for a closer look, what do you think about the cargo capacity? I think actually it's pretty reasonable, all things considered.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, obviously we have quite a bit of luggage in here right now. Hopefully the camera can adjust to that. But you're not going to be able to absolutely stuff this. And you also do have a little bit more space underneath. So if you need more, there's a little bit. And there's also just a hair, about 3 cubic feet under the front trunk. And I appreciate that with the long hood, long-ish hood, we do have a usable front trunk.
Let's see if I can actually lift this up so you can see under there. Ooh, that latches
pretty deep in there.
Pretty deep in there. We've got a lot of stuff in here. But you know, we have a pretty big and accommodating cargo area. There it is.
You can go to the gym, you'll be all right.
And then, under here, we have a 12-inch subwoofer. I suspect that in future versions that are not the launch edition, you know, you might be able to fit a temporary spare tire in there. That well does look suspiciously spare tire sized and shaped. We have the button for the hatch. How do you feel about that location?
Every time I go to close it, I miss it. So if this was the vehicle I owned every day, I would probably get used to it. But for now, probably not my favorite. Although, again, I recognize it's going to be easier for a lot of folks. You and I are on the taller end.
I like the thought. I have to admit, I have a Dodge at home. I have a Durango. And I've owned it for 6 years. So
it's a good chunk.
And every time I go to close the hatch, I touch up here. But I have to admit, I still like that it's here because, you know, with kids on the way, that is much easier for kids to get to. There's no kid that's gonna, you know, no 5-year-old's gonna be able to reach up there to close the hatch. And here, at least, you could be like, would you just please close the hatch? You got your bag out, close it.
And if you are having them close it, it is a nice close. It's very slow. It alerts you that it's happening, so plenty safe to do. I will say, one of my favorite little touches, we do have the two-tone paint, but we also have a differently colored accent stripe that runs along here. Not chrome, and I do appreciate that. We do get just a little bit of a Wagoneer badging here on that C-pillar.
It's Wagoneers. It's Wagoneers.
Wagoneer S.
This is more than one Wagoneer.
Wagoneer S, and I love the positioning of that. Nice and subtle.
It's plural. It's more than one Wagoneer.
Let us know in the comment, is that plural or is that Wagoneer S?
So good that it's more than one Wagoneer.
I suspect people will agree with you, Alex.
Behind this door, we find, yes, a CCS charge connector, illuminated so you can find the J1772 part. That's kind of a nice touch. And then we have the charge display there, electric button to release, and then little status LEDs to tell you what's going on. This little door, you can just actually remove it. It snaps off pretty easily. I accidentally snapped it off earlier. It's formatted, though, like it should go down. I don't know. At any rate, we are going to get NACS or J3400 connectors at some point in Stellantis EVs, just not yet. And Jeep has not said whether or not they plan on joining the Tesla party. So you will be able to charge this at V4 stations, select V3 stations, but the majority of that supercharger network, it's going to be a little off the limits, or off limits for Jeep drivers at the moment. Now, since this platform was logically designed to have a big engine under the hood, again, because it's a mixed-use platform, we have a pretty decently sized front trunk. And that is actually one of the hallmarks of a front trunk in a vehicle, is that they have proportions and designs, kind of like ICE vehicles. So we have a removable rubber mat there, this oddly large foam divider. I mean, check that thing out.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of storage space.
It's a very stepped storage, so you could put soft bags in here, no problem. For me, it's like a medium-sized pizza box, but you know, if you would then have to lose the foam, I don't think that's a problem, but it's a little bit uniquely shaped. I expect this is going to be one of the smaller vehicles we see on this STLA large platform, because this is not terribly large itself. That's why we do get that overhang, but thank goodness we do get a little bit of that storage space back.
You know what the first thing I did to our Volvo C40?
What's that?
I removed the foam thingy.
That makes sense.
And you can then stick like 3 times the amount of stuff in there.
Or if you want to get real creative, you can 3D print your own enclosure.
Yeah. Curb weight, about 5,600 pounds. So actually pretty similar to the hybrid 4Runner and the Grand Cherokee 4xe, just to give you some matter of perspective there. But of course, heavier than a Tesla Model Y. Size-wise, this is between Model Y and Model X, but these tires, these are more like Jeep Cherokee tires. So 235 with 50 series, 20-inch wheels. Black wheels, only way to go at the moment. There's more coming later. The tires are a little on the skinny side, which means obviously we're gonna have to talk about that in the drive section. Reasonable amount of weight as you'd expect in an EV, but like I said earlier, compared to some of those General Motors Ultiums, this actually seems like a pretty logical step. Let's see how that impacts the inside though. Now, depending on the dimension, this is really similar to the Grand Cherokee. Combined legroom, almost identical, but headroom, that is a little different.
It's a little bit less. I have this seat all the way down, and the only thing that really does is make me have to kick my legs out a little bit more. I can't sit super upright, but I am fitting in here pretty okay.
Yeah, the seating position ends up a little bit more upright than we find, a little bit more reclined than in the Grand Cherokee. We have that big panoramic moonroof right there. The shade does open and close, and let's take a look at the seat controls, because this borrows basically the most adjustable seats out of the Grand Cherokee and Wagoneer. So we have a power extending thigh cushion, we have 4-way lumbar support, we have inflatable bolsters, we have seat massage functionality, 4-way adjustable headrests, lots and lots of ways to configure that seat. And then let's hop in the back seat so we can see how that matches up. first up legroom because you'll sit behind yourself there.
Yep, and I put the seat all the way back just to check out that spacing, and I do have just enough room and a nice curve here in the seat to make sure that works.
Yeah, not bad. And over here with the driver's seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, I have enough room back here to definitely put a rear-facing child seat in the back. In the center, we have air vents. Heated and ventilated seats are currently standard because there's only the one way this comes. We then have the onboard AC inverter. Not a lot of output, just 150 watts. Kind of disappointed there. USB-C ports.
But we do run into a bit of an issue here, and that is going to be headroom for those in the back because obviously these seats don't go down.
Yeah, if I'm not slouching, my head is touching the ceiling right there, and Travis is craning his neck just a little bit in the rear.
Couple inches short here. Yep.
But we do have a lot of width in the back because this rear bench is wider than average. We get 58 inches from door to door, and you'll notice my head, it's not right against the side sill like you'd find in something like a Kia EV6 or some of those other narrower EVs. And it's also really obvious when you take a look at the armrest because it's actually pretty wide in the rear. So if you don't want to get cozy with your passengers in the back, you don't have to. But also, if you want to put, say, a child seat in the middle and someone wants to sit on either side to care for them, it's going to be a lot easier here than in some of those smaller EVs. On the latch anchor front, we get sets for the outboard seats only, none for the center seat position, although I suspect that the buckles are far enough apart that it may not interfere with too many child seats. Also a nice touch, the center shoulder belt comes out of the seat back itself, not out of the ceiling, meaning that child seats are going to be much better centered right here in the middle of the rear bench, giving you easier access for adults or other children to sit on either side. So what do you think of the dashboard, Travis? Do you think we need 55 inches of LCD?
Well, each person up front only gets 45 because you either lose the passenger screen as the driver or you lose the HUD as the passenger. There's a lot of screen here, and honestly, for the size of vehicle this is, which is not enormous, I would say that I don't know if I felt more inundated by screens in any other vehicle I've been in a while. And we've seen some cars with a lot of screen.
I like the integration though. I do like the fact that they're more letterbox, more in line with the dashboard. It does give me kind of a Porsche Macan kind of vibe. This passenger screen though, this is the one I'm not the biggest fan of. Let's see if it's on or off. You might have to go over there to see.
It's on now. Yep.
It has a prism so the driver can't actually see it. But this screen does not do as much as I would like. And I think that's the origin of my complaint. It does stream video if you have something connected via the HDMI input, which means you can do whatever, I guess. You can also navigate and you can control some infotainment sources, but you can't CarPlay. Can't CarPlay or anything like that over there, pardon me. Here in the middle though, we do have a pretty big CarPlay implementation. You can see it's not the entire screen. So the upper section of the screen, that's reserved for things like climate control functionality, and then this side is for the shortcuts. We then have touch buttons for things like the heated steering wheel, heated and ventilated seats there. And this software is the latest version of Uconnect. It's actually pretty snappy, pretty easy to deal with. We have lots and lots of different camera views, and they're all pretty crisp here, something that I do like. There are some other electric vehicle screens too, for instance, maximum battery level, AC charging level. Oddly, you can't adjust as much as you can in other vehicles. We just get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for those various charging rates, and they don't tell you what they correspond to. Charging scheduling, yada, yada, yada. Sorry, my fingers are really dry and I'm not touching where I'm supposed to. We have a power flow screen so you can see where the power is going. You can see what options you have on, so max or minimum regeneration and creep on or off. If you want one pedal driving, you want max and you want off. Battery regeneration level is unavailable because the battery is full, so it's just letting us know that. And then as far as the EV controls, that's basically it because all the rest of the things are the same as the rest of the lineup. Then down here, we get this climate control screen, which in many ways is a duplicate of what's going on up top. Because if I go to the comfort screen there, you see that's like basically the same thing going on.
A lot of similarities, yeah.
Here's the logic, as I was told. If you want to be CarPlaying, you can then have your climate control on down here. Also, you can just have your massage readily and accessible very easily there. You can then tuck that up if you want to so that we have access to this big storage area. Moving down the dash, we have the power button, a rotary style shifter, 2 big cup holders there, some additional controls, and thankfully less shiny black plastic than we've seen in other Jeep models. Here we find the wireless charging slot. So Qi wireless charging slot, pretty deep storage cubby right there. If we go ahead and close that, and go over to the driver's side, we find the color head-up display. Those are really difficult to film, so sorry, you'll have to see that later. And then here we have the approximately 12-inch full LCD instrument cluster running slightly different software to what we find in some of the other Jeep models. It's been a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more focused on the electric car. We then find the latest Squircle. Yep, Squircle, square bottom, flat bottom rather, flat top. Cruise control buttons over here. adaptive cruise control, but no automated driving. And then on this side, we find the controls for that full LCD cluster. We then have the audio controls on the back of the steering wheel. Now, the one thing I noticed in here, Travis, is that the materials and build quality is definitely above where we find a lot of EVs in the same sort of size segment.
Yeah, now this is starting on its own, right? So it's not built off of another platform or another model. And in that, it's doing a good job of setting its own standards. So we do have really nice lighting, 64 different colors. We have all vegan interior, so lots of synthetics in here, and a lot of recycled materials, but it all comes across really nicely.
Yeah, it's the soft touch points I think I really appreciate. So lots of soft touch hand-stitched parts. The bottom part of that door is color matched, but it's actually a hard plastic. That's really the only hard plastic you'll find down there at the bottom. Everything else above there is a soft touch stitch material. They're definitely wanting this to compete more with the Lyriq than the Blazer, and I think it shows. So the hand stitching on the dash, the way that the stitching is done all around the seats, and the fact that that back of the seat, this is also the same sort of vegan leather that we find up front. I think they did a really good job on this, actually.
Yeah, even perforations here in the center armrest just shows kind of an attention to detail. And I actually appreciate that even though that is a harder plastic, that doesn't bother me. The fact that it's color matched just shows that attention to detail.
And then we have that patterning that I mentioned earlier. But if you guys are thinking that maybe Jeep has ended their love affair with shiny black plastic or piano black, fear not. There is still quite a lot because it's all around that passenger screen that may scratch easily. And then we also get, just for matching purposes, a little bit of a section over there on the driver's side. But I have to admit, build quality and parts quality, I think actually comes across as a bit more premium than the Lyriq.
It does feel like this is worth the extra money that you spend, and that's a very good thing.
I'm curious to see what those upcoming less expensive models will look like.
Yeah, what'll be missing or what will still be there.
So Travis, Jeep says this will go 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, let's give it a go.
And we're wheel spinning till about 30-something miles an hour.
Yeah.
For anybody that's counting out there, that was 3.6-ish?
Yeah, give or take. But it would go a little bit faster if we actually kept the traction control on, but it's a little less fun that way.
It is definitely less fun. Two things are hampering, obviously, the 0 to 60 performance in this vehicle. It is the tires, and then the tire size, and the tire compound.
And then the weight.
Yeah, the weight I could see,
Just
but
a bit.
3.4 seconds sounds totally believable if we had some meaty summer tires, I would say.
They'd have to be nice and warm. Like these tires would have to be nice and warm in the right conditions for that to really come through.
Oh, that did take a while.
Yep.
So that was 134 feet. Guys, that is a long time, actually, honestly, for a modern EV. All down to the tire size.
Yeah, and the thing about these tires is that they are more of an eco compound. So even though we are on the thinner side, it could already be more aggressive just depending on that compound. But you took a look and it looks like there might be room for more tire, right?
Yeah, and I would say just two things for the viewer out there. The first thing is obviously the tire size is going to affect not just the acceleration, not just the braking, but also the handling, where we're going to give this a C score.
Yeah.
But it is the easiest thing that you can change aftermarket, because there is nothing you're going to do to get a Chevy Blazer EV any faster 0 to 60 in a rational world.
Yep.
But with this, wicked fast, pretty easy swap actually. Just go get some summer tires and jam them on there. You're gonna have to give up some range.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, right now this is just over 300 as far as its overall rating. It's not going to do that on the highway, obviously, but it's also a nice riding vehicle. So I would just make sure you're not getting a tire compound that's going to be too terribly different, because this is a pretty nicely balanced package. And
we will say we were both surprised at the efficiency. Right now, we've gone up several thousand feet of elevation. We've been driving it hard, doing stupid stuff.
We've been testing.
Testing, that's what we'll call it. 2.3 miles per kilowatt hour. Earlier, we were averaging 3.7 to 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour, including some highway driving, etc. I think we were both astonished at the efficiency, actually.
You will easily, everyday driving, be over 3 miles kilowatt hour. This is a fairly heavy, quite powerful machine, and those are not usually the most efficient. And so obviously that tire compound is going to lead into it. This is pretty aerodynamic, right? It's the most aerodynamic Jeep they've ever built, which makes lots of sense. But again, real world, it's coming through that way. Yeah,
and it's not as heavy as some of the competition, depending exactly what you want to compare it to.
Yep.
The ZDX It's not a lightweight vehicle, neither is the Cadillac Lyriq. So that's really kind of where this fits, is in that Lyriq, ZDX, Polestar 3, Audi Q8, e-tron territory, something along those lines. And I know for some viewers out there, it may seem weird to talk about this in the same sentence as those, but you know, Jeep has kind of turned into the American luxury brand for Chrysler in a way, the Chrysler Corporation of, you know, Stellantis family of things.
Yep.
And I think that as far as materials quality and build quality in here, it's honestly a solid competitor to something like an RZ or a ZDX or a Q8. I think trying to go, obviously, BMW iX, Mercedes EQE, that's too far.
Yep.
But you know, I would say in this other middle realm, decent competitor.
Yeah, and you know, in the last decade, we have seen Jeep get more and more premium. This wears the Wagoneer badge, not the Grand Cherokee badge, and a lot of that probably comes down to pricing and sort of where they want to segment this. The Wagoneer is the more premium of the Jeep offerings. This definitely is on the premium end, but it's not the most.
Yeah. But price-wise, it kind of makes sense that they're going to try and do this thing.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, on the Tesla side of things, we have the Plaids, so you can do bonkers things in your Plaids.
Yep, more performance.
Model Y is going to come across as a more performance-oriented machine. Suspension's firmer, it's lighter, but on the Model X side, I think I prefer the size and the shape here a little bit more. Also, the screens and this feels a little bit more modern than what we find in the Model X.
Yeah, this is definitely a more conventional layout, but it's done in a really nice way. We have nothing but excess screen real estate. So if the Model X is too much screen, in a weird way, this might be more comfortable because of the way they're laid out, but you've got screens absolutely everywhere. It's an entirely different product, really. They just happen to both be electric and kind of the right size and pricing category.
Yeah, and now for our viewers out there, I guess we should just run quickly through some of the laundry list of things out there that you might want to cross-shop against this and kind of how they fit in. We'll try and make this short, I promise everybody. We've got, from General Motors, a bazillion different. Let's just sort of toss them all in the same bucket. Honda, Acura, Cadillac, Chevy, all of them all together.
Yeah.
I think I like the steering feel in here better than the Ultium family of appropriately sized competitors. This doesn't feel quite as heavy. We have CarPlay.
Yes.
But we don't have the promise of Google's Android operating system and constant updates. You'll notice in the presentation, they didn't promise anything on extra features or whatever over time.
No, and the other thing we're missing from that General Motors offers in very good fashion is hands-free driving.
That's true.
Adaptive cruise control, we have driving assist, but it is hands on the wheel, not hands off.
Yep.
And that's a little bit interesting because Stellantis does have that system already in other vehicles.
No Super Cruise, but they did kind of imply that could come later because we do have their hands-free driving assistant now in Grand Cherokee L and in the Ram trucks. It's probably a natural fit here in the 2025 model year, I would think. Then we have Polestar 3. I like the look of Polestar 3 a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's a little edgier. I mean, this is fairly mainstream, but I think it's been executed really well. So I'd probably lean towards Polestar on the looks. That one's going to be kind of a coin toss. Individual preference.
The materials quality on the interior is very similar, I would say, to be honest. Assembly quality, I think, is better in the Polestar. Fit and finish details better there. That one also has the promise of more software updates coming.
Yeah.
Now, Jeep did say this is fully over-the-air updatable, but we have not seen anything in the Chrysler family of vehicles in North America have that kind of regular software update that we actually have started to see in the Ultium family.
Yeah, we talked about that in our podcast just the other day, which is the software is in it. What are they doing with it? And you get your more traditional legacy manufacturer who is not in a rush to start updating software, and you get some of the new kids on the block that are, and Polestar's kind of walking that line because they're a newer brand, but obviously attached to a legacy automaker. But I do think you're going to see more advancement there in short order than you would see on the big threes, right?
Now, how about Audi Q8? We recently drove the Q8. It's a little older. It's also on a multi-use platform, kind of like this. I think I would take this over the Audi.
This is going to drive sportier than the Audi, but that is probably what I would lean towards. The Audi's nice, and it's got a fair amount of space, and it's definitely comfortable. But yeah, for my dollar, I'd probably lean this direction.
Now, the one comparison I forgot to mention earlier in the day when we were talking, Mustang Mach-E. That is a very similarly sized vehicle, but it's being marketed as much more of a mainstream, not a premium option. And I was always surprised that we didn't get a Lincoln version. And if there was a Lincoln version, that would be the corollary here.
100%.
But there's no Nautilus-y.
Yeah, correct. Correct. I like the Mustang Mach-E. The shape of this is also very similar to that, but it would have to be one of the lower options in here that does not currently exist. We're anticipating it, but I imagine if you get something like a rear-wheel drive option of this, you're looking at a higher-end Mach-E. That would be close, and honestly, it would come down to the dollar. Where I go, where is that line? But
there's some things that are similar in my mind. It's like
for sure.
Mach-E, I complained about it having tires that were too narrow as well, because 225s are what you find in most of them.
Yeah.
Although you can get the GT and the Rally now.
Yep.
The trunk is a little smaller than this in practical terms, as far as what you can fit back there, but the frunk is bigger.
Yep.
And that is on a dedicated 100% battery electric platform. So you'll notice it doesn't have a transmission tunnel here, has a flat floor in the back.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've always had a problem with the Mach-E with, unless you get, oddly enough, the GT or the Rally, is that the ride's a little on the firm side.
Yeah, and this one, we only have one suspension option here. It's not an air ride suspension or anything, but it is really well balanced. And so I think you would have to compare this with that GT suspension, because that's going to be the closest. And at that point, I'd say they're probably pretty equal.
Yeah, and I would say my bottom line on the Mach-E is that this is a honest to goodness, solid Tesla copy from Ford. Like, it drives quite Tesla-like in terms of the suspension tuning and the way that they tune the electric motors to come online, etc. And then the duplication of the front trunk, etc. Very, very Tesla-like in that respect. And this is trying to go in a different direction. This is trying to be an electric interpretation of something else in the lineup. And as a result, we get like more room between your head and the sills in the back. More legroom, definitely as well.
And the funkiest spoiler in the segment, for sure.
Funkiest spoiler in the segment. Now, what do you think about something like a Ioniq 5? You could Ioniq 5. It's going to be differently proportioned and smaller in a number of dimensions.
Yeah, I mean, you'd probably be looking at something more like a GV60 in that family line, just to get sort of the premium feel to it. Obviously, that one
be real smaller.
Yeah.
Yep.
But an Ioniq 5, it was Ioniq 5N. Would be more interesting, for the
way
dollar.
more fun than this. Yeah, way more fun.
Well, I'm not sure it's a squealy. We'd have to
not as squealy, but then it has wide grippy tires. So,
right, and not probably not as efficient. I mean, that's the other thing is the performance version of Ioniq 5 is way less efficient. If we put sticky tires on, this would also be, but
there is a reason that this is so efficient, and again, really good on the efficiency numbers.
It's going to be a weird cross shop there.
Yeah. I will say the blended braking system in this one, because this does have a blended regen braking system, and you have that option of basically one pedal driving on or off and creep on or off. Transitions between the blended braking and friction braking in sort of a not quite emergency braking maneuver, but mild braking to moderate braking maneuver. It's not the smoothest. I wish that had been dialed in a little bit better.
Yeah.
Most of the competition is a little bit just smoother there.
I would hope that's one of those things, if there are software updates, where that maybe gets tuned in just a little bit. And again, that's the beauty, is that we could see that, but no promise, no conversation of it. But it'd be nice.
On the other hand, I am currently getting one of the best back massages that you can find in an EV.
Especially for a vehicle this size.
Yeah. And this does explain some of the weight here. I mean, my passenger seat on this side is powered, it's memory linked, it's massaging, it's got inflatable bolsters, it's got the extending thigh cushion, etc. This has all of those kind of features that we've come to expect in a luxury or premium vehicle, with one exception, and that is the lack of air suspension or an adaptive suspension of any kind.
Yes, but I will tell you the thing I would swap out for an adaptive suspension is the sound system, and this one is great.
Yeah, that's true. The sound system is fantastic.
There's not many 12-inch subwoofers in the automotive world that are factory, not aftermarket.
Yes, and that have a really solid tune to them. So if you're an audiophile, you definitely want to check this out, and then let us know your opinions of the audio system down there in the comment section below.
Yep. So to put one of these in your garage right now, which is an option because they are on sale, between about $72,000 and $74,000. This is the top trim. There are very few options available. But the question, Alex, this is Jeep's first battery electric here in North America. Do you think this is the right direction to go?
I kind of am sad they didn't tiptoe in the water with the electric Recon that we do find in Europe. It is much smaller. They thought it was not appropriate for us. That's why they're waiting. And they've hopped in with both feet because this is really, really quick. 3.4 seconds, 0 to 60. The range is pretty good. And I have to admit, I'm actually impressed with the charge curve because this may not have the headline fast kilowatt charging number, but when it comes to actual minutes to charge, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what matters, is how long do you end up spending charging. Should be about 300 miles. That's the EPA rating. Obviously, you're going to get less on the highway, but that means that if you are taking this out for a longer cruise, you shouldn't spend too much time stopped to keep yourself going. I will say, comparative to whatever else Stellantis has on the market right now in the electric world, fully electric is that Fiat 500e, which feels very, very different than kind of the effort that we see here.
And importantly, Jeep's electric offensive is not stopping here because we are going to be getting the Jeep Recon at some point or something like it, more of a rugged off-road EV that's going to be sort of the electric modern interpretation of the Wrangler. They're promising doors that come off and that same open air experience in an electric model. Until we get that though, I am really intrigued to see what other versions of the Wagoneer S come. This is a 2024, which I thought was weird, but that's probably because 2025 is coming real soon, and that's when we're gonna start seeing the less expensive models. I would not be surprised if we got a single motor rear wheel drive model, perhaps maybe with a bigger front trunk or something like that. Obviously, we're gonna get versions without the Macintosh audio system, without the massaging seats, without the passenger screen. By the time you delete all of that, I could see a world where maybe this could start under $50,000. Now, it is being positioned as more of a Cadillac than a Chevy competitor. I think that's obvious from the inside design. The roominess is pretty similar to the Blazer EV long-term that we have, but the fit and finish and the interior styling is significantly better. And Jeep is still giving us smartphone integration. So whether you love Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you can do both of them in here. You don't have to go with just the factory nav if you don't want to. I love the fact that it feels and looks so much like a regular Jeep that I kind of wish it was just called a Jeep Grand Cherokee, maybe a Jeep Grand Cherokee E/E or something like that. The Wagoneer S name seems a little bit weird to me because it's not a Wagoneer, doesn't look like one. It has black pillars instead of the body-colored pillars, and it's not sized like one either. Let us know what you think about that down there in the comment section below, of course. And would you consider one? Would you consider a Cadillac as its most appropriate competitor or something else? This is definitely not the same thing as a Model Y, for better or worse. If you want that Tesla experience, you're really only going to find that in a Tesla currently. But if you want something that's cushier, has bigger seats, massaging seats, that kind of stuff, big back seat, and a reasonably sized cargo area, not huge, then, check out the Wagoneer S.